Tom Cruise, for my money, is the biggest movie star on the planet. He brought people back to theaters last summer with Top Gun Maverick. I'm repping the shirt here in his honor. But this summer, he brings the Ethan Hunt character back to the big screen in the seventh installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. Let's talk about Dead Reckoning Part 1. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my very spoiler-free review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I am going to talk about this movie in the vaguest terms in regards to the plot and stuff. The movie just got released today. Lately I've been hitting movies maybe, a week or two behind, but this one is one that I had to get into the theaters and see on opening night with, a decent-sized crowd. I think that is the way to do it with a movie like this. I mentioned at the top, Tom Cruise is the biggest star around, and it's wild to me because that is, biggest movie star is a name you could apply to him many times over the last, 40 years that he's been doing this. It is impressive, to say the least. And this is a franchise that started out, strong enough in the mid-90s. The second movie, a few years later, kind of faltered. The third one, nobody really kind of talks about because the second one wasn't great, but in retrospect is okay. But then the last few installments have just upped the ante, upped the stunts, and now we've got part one of what is thought to be the quote-unquote finale of the Mission Impossible series. But look, these things never kind of stay dead, right? As long as they keep making money. So Dead Reckoning might not be the end for this character, but we'll find out, more about that next summer as we get to part two. But before we get to any of the stuff from this movie, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We've got a ton of great movie and TV reviews on the channel here, and please consider subscribing down below. I try to post something new just about every day, so if you click that notification bell as well, you will get alerted when I drop new videos. Or just like this video, comment down below. All that stuff does help the channel out. All right, so my history with this franchise is as follows. I didn't really grow up watching action movies. That sort of came later in my cinema history. But as a result, I would say one of the first big budget action movies I ever saw in the theater was the first Mission Impossible. Yeah, I saw Jurassic Park. I guess that maybe was the first. But Mission Impossible definitely, came before Independence Day and before Twister. And it was pretty cool. I certainly had never really seen anything like that on the big screen. The second one I never ended up watching until many, many years later. Same with the third. But the fourth one really, upped the ante, and we kept going here. So this one is directed by the same gentleman who directed at least the last one, and I think he maybe had a hand in writing or co-writing some of the ones before that. Christopher McQuarrie, and he has writing credits as well with several movies in the franchise. So at this point, this is really all about him and Tom Cruise kind of working together, figuring out, okay, what stunts are we going to do? How can we up the ante? And that type of thing. A lot of people returning here for this one, as you might imagine. Someone who has been a part of the franchise from the original, Ving Rhames, he is still on board. Simon Pegg, who's been in the last few. But you have some newcomers as well to the franchise, including Haley Atwell. And the new sort of big bad, Isai Morales, is new to the series here. Although, I had to kind of look this up because I didn't remember some of the older ones well enough. But, there's a little flashback, and I wasn't sure if that was, we remembered seeing that or what. And no spoilers here, but there is somebody from the very first installment that makes a return in this one as well. So, eagle-eyed viewers of the franchise will probably enjoy that. But on a real basic level, the plot is essentially, there's this two key kind of, component that once put together, it is a very, very powerful tool because if this key falls into the wrong hands, it could speak to the end of the world. The new big bad is this sort of AI technology, and that's what they're sort of looking to figure out, how to stop. And really, that's all I'm going to say about it because, I want you to go into this with sort of fresh eyes. So let's talk about the review portion now that we've kind of glossed over the plot a little bit. But um, these movies are always upping the game, and look, in franchises that are this long in the tooth, you almost have to, right? Every time we say this about Fast and Furious, oh, it's got to be bigger and more impressive with the stunts and everything. And whereas franchises like the Fast and Furious, and there's a lot of others in that vein, Jurassic World is another one. um Unlike those, this is sort of grounded. And not to say that crazy things don't happen. It is an action blockbuster franchise, so we're going to get this. But this is more down to earth in the sort of James Bond tradition. And, the Bourne movies was another sort of take on that. But Tom Cruise, famous here for doing these stunts for real, doing practical things. And I had heard about the one. There's like one main one that maybe you've seen on the poster or in some of the previews. But there were a few others that after the movie I looked up and I was like, okay, is he really doing this as well? And yes, indeed, most of the stuff on here, he has done in the practical sense, and it's wild when you think about some of this stuff. And there's some things I could get into, in a spoiler sense that we don't need to necessarily talk about, but different things that they had to specifically build for this movie. And I'm not just talking about set pieces, but actual machinery that could have been easily rendered in a CGI sort of motif like the Fast and Furious franchise, for example. And you can tell the difference. That it looks fine, but this, especially knowing, that Cruise is so authentic with it. And it helped me watching Top Gun Maverick too, to know that 90% or whatever of the plane flying and the aerial stunts and all of that were authentic. It really does make a difference. And as an example, the sort of main kind of stunt that maybe you've heard about in this movie, when we see the main component of that come out, it was like, this giddy kind of moment, like, oh my God, here it comes. And at the point of like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? Is he going to make it kind of thing? You could hear a pin drop in the theater because everybody, I think, was kind of holding their breath. I know I was, knowing that, look, obviously, he's still alive, so he didn't die or anything. But this crazy stunt they did on the first day of shooting, because Cruise basically was like, look, if I don't make it through this, then we don't have a movie, so why shoot a bunch of other stuff? This will be the first thing we shoot, and if I live through it, then great, we can make the rest of the movie. I mean, that's how crazy these stunts are that he's doing in these movies. And this is another one. Now, I will say, unlike some of the other ones in the franchise, this comes very, very late into the movie. This is a 2 hour and 43-minute movie, and we'll get to sort of my thoughts on the length of it here in a moment. But unlike some of the other ones where you start off with a huge, explosion or big, stunt or anything, this is a bit more reserved in the intro. And we sort of build up to the big moments. The two biggest things I would say in this movie in terms of stunts and action sequences, feature towards the end of the movie, maybe in the last, 30 or 40 minutes, let's say. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the length, and that will sort of bring me to my few negatives about the movie. There aren't many, but there's a few. The length, I will say, I did not really feel until close to the end. The one sequence goes on far too long, and there were a couple other sequences. There's like a car chase scene that I thought maybe went on a few minutes too long. There were a couple examples of that throughout the film, but I would say I felt at the most towards the end, there's one big scene that drags on a bit too long and is too close for my taste to, one of the popular Titanic scenes. It felt like they were sort of cribbing from that a little bit. And if you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. But other than that, I did not feel the length of this movie. Now, in terms of sort of the character development and the plot schematics and all of that, they were all fine. These movies, and by these movies, I don't even mean Mission Impossible, but sort of, action blockbusters. It isn't so much about the characters or necessarily, the even schematics of the plot. Okay, the world's about to end. We get it. That's kind of all we need sometimes. And as such, the villain in this is, a bit nondescript and, a very generic, one could say. But that is really to be expected. People go to these movies not for that, but to see the big fights, the big action sequences and set pieces. And I think in terms of that, this movie delivers. Maybe not as often as it could have for this long of a runtime, but I think it worked. And the people that we care about here, Ethan Hunt and his crew, both old and new, we do care about those characters because, we've seen them before many, many times in some cases, and we do care about them because, that's the whole crux of the franchise, right? We care about Ethan Hunt and his Impossible Missions team, even if they are new members to the team, like the Haley Atwell character. We care about her too because Ethan Hunt cares about her, right? So in that respect, I think it is what we can expect from a movie like this. But look, the bottom line is, Tom Cruise is sort of on a, no pun intended, a mission to bring these big blockbuster practical effect movies back to the big screen, and he's one of the few people doing it. Christopher Nolan, you could say, is part of that. Especially, he shoots everything on 70 millimeter IMAX, and that kind of thing. There's a few. George Miller, who does Mad Max and that kind of thing. Same thing there, but it's few and far between. And Top Gun Maverick being such a huge hit last year, I think kind of renewed people's faith in Tom Cruise as a bona fide movie star. Because other than the Mission Impossible movies, he hasn't really had a huge hit in a while. Probably War of the Worlds maybe was the last one or something. But there's been a lot of good movies in there, just not a ton of people saw them on the scale of a movie like a Top Gun Maverick or some of the Mission Impossible. So look, is this the best one of the franchise? I would have to say probably not. But really, the last few are all kind of in this mix together of, if you said Fallout was your favorite, or if you said Ghost Protocol was your favorite, I'd say, okay, sounds good. So this might be your favorite. For me, it was definitely in the mix there. I almost gave it an A, but I think it is a little too long. And certainly, the villain and the characters overall left a little bit to be desired, other than Hunt and his team. But I will leave Dead Reckoning Part 1 with an A-. We're going to get Part 2 next summer, so we will look out for that. I think they are done filming it. I think they kind of filmed them back to back. So just kind of in the editing process and whatnot now. But in any event, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. I will post a link to my Top Gun Maverick review if you want to check that out here at the end of the video. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see everybody next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.